The deep hum of the Solaron spaceport filled the air as Rian stepped down from the ramp of the Earth Envoy shuttle. The metal floor beneath his boots vibrated faintly with the rhythm of arriving and departing ships. Above him, the curved roof of the port shimmered like liquid silver, reflecting the glow of Solar's twin suns. The air was warmer than Earth's, but carried a strange sweetness, as if flowers were always blooming somewhere nearby. Rian was not the leader of the mission, but he was the one who had been noticed by Solar's people even before he landed. 6 months earlier, during a deep space exploration, his small crew had encountered a stranded Solaron scout vessel. Rian had risked his life to repair their failing systems and guide them home. That single act had been recorded and riddled across the planet. Now, when he walked through the spaceport, eyes followed him. Tall figures with glowing eyes and soft, light-colored hair turned their heads to see the human who had returned there. The Solaron guards were unlike any soldiers Rian had seen. Their armor was a single smooth piece that seemed to grow from their bodies, glimmering faintly as they moved. Each guard carried a slender staff tipped with a crystal that pulsed like a heartbeat. Despite their size and presence, their voices were soft as they greeted the Earth envoys. The leader of the mission, Commander Hale, walked ahead, exchanging formal words with the port's officials. Rian followed, keeping a respectful distance. He had been told that today they would be received at the Royal Hall, the heart of Solar's government. It was a rare honor for outsiders. A fleet of open transport gliders waited outside the port. They hovered just above the ground, supported by invisible energy fields. Rian took a seat in one beside a Solaron driver who smiled at him without speaking. The vehicle lifted smoothly, and the city unfolded beneath them. Solar's capital was a vision Rian knew he would never forget. Towers of crystal and stone rose into the sky, their surfaces alive with shifting colors that reflected the suns. Between the buildings ran wide rivers of clear water, crossed by bridges shaped like arcs of light. Parks and gardens covered rooftops, and he saw children running along glowing walkways suspended high above the streets. They passed over a great open plaza where hundreds of people were gathered. The crowd looked up as the convoy glided overhead, and Rian saw hands raised in greeting. Some even called out words in the Solaron language that he could not yet understand. The Royal Hall appeared ahead, built into the side of a vast cliff that overlooked the shining waters of the Sky Sea. The structure seemed grown rather than built, its walls a blend of living stone and luminous crystal. Waterfalls streamed down from the cliffs beside it, sending fine mist into the air. The glider settled onto a wide landing terrace. Guards in ceremonial armor stood at each side, their staves raised in salute. Rian followed the others as they entered the hall through great arched doors. Inside, the air was cool and carried the faint scent of some unfamiliar flower. The hall's central chamber was enormous, lit by natural sunlight streaming through high crystal windows. At the far end stood the royal family on a raised dais. The king was tall and broad-shouldered, his long hair flowing like molten silver. Beside him stood the queen, her presence calm but powerful. 2 young women stood just before them. They were clearly sisters, sharing the same golden eyes as their parents. But they carried themselves differently. The elder sister, wearing a deep blue robe lined with silver, had a steady, thoughtful gaze. Her movements were deliberate, each step measured. The younger sister wore a robe of soft green, her hair braided with tiny beads that caught the light when she moved. Her smile was bright and quick, and her eyes seemed to take in everything at once. When the introductions began, Rian expected the royal attention to focus on Commander Hale. But instead, the king's voice called his name, Rian of Earth. The king said in the Solaron tongue, though Rian's earpiece translated the words into his language. Your courage has been told in every hall and home of Solara. You are welcome among us as more than a guest. You are a friend. Rian bowed as he had been taught. I am honored, your majesty. Then the elder princess stepped forward. I am Leora, she said, her voice calm but warm. It was my crew. You saved when the dark void threatened to take them. For that, I owe you my gratitude. The younger princess moved closer with a quicker pace. And I am Alara, she said with a playful tone. I have heard so many stories of you that I almost feel I know you already. Rian was unsure how to respond to such attention. I only did what anyone would have done, he said quietly. Leora's eyes softened, but Alara shook her head. Slightly. No, she said. Many would not have risked what you risked. That is why your name is spoken here. The royal family invited the envoys to join them in a smaller, more private chamber for a welcoming feast. Rian found himself seated between the two sisters. The table was covered with foods unlike anything on earth. There were crystal bowls, filled with glowing fruit, flat silver trays of thin bread that tasted faintly sweet, and tall cups of a cool, shimmering drink. As they ate, Leora asked him about Earth's oceans, its cities, and its sky. Alara asked him about his travels, his ship, and what it was like to fly through uncharted space. Rian found himself speaking more than he usually did, answering their questions and asking some of his own. He learned that Leora studied Solara's ancient history, while Alara trained in the art of navigating the Sky Sea. The evening ended with the king presenting the Earth envoys with a crystal seal, a symbol of friendship between worlds. As the envoys prepared to leave, Leora's voice stopped Rian. "Will you walk with us tomorrow?" she asked. "There's a part of Solara I would like to show you." Before he could answer, Alara spoke as well. "And I will come too. There's more than one part worth seeing." Rian hesitated only for a moment. "Yes," he said, "I will like that," as he left the hall and returned to the glider. The twin suns were setting over the Sky Sea, painting the waves with gold and red. Rian felt that the real journey had only just begun. The next morning, the city was alive with music and color. Rian stood on the balcony of the guest residence, watching the streets below fill with people. Ribbons of bright cloth fluttered between buildings, and banners in shades of gold, blue, and green swayed in the breeze. Musicians played instruments that shimmered with light as they moved, and the air carried the sound of chimes, drums, and voices singing together. Commander Hale had told the envoys that today was the Festival of Stars, one of the most important days in Solara's calendar. It was a celebration of unity, when people from every part of the planet came together to honor their history and hopes for the future. This year, the king had invited the Earth delegation to take part in the main ceremony, a rare honor for outsiders. When the time came, Rian dressed in the clothing provided for him, a light robe of silver blue fabric that moved like water when he walked. He joined the rest of the envoys as they boarded the open gliders again, this time heading for the central plaza. The plaza was vast, surrounded by towers that reflected the twin suns. Like giant mirrors, at its center stood a raised platform shaped like a star, its surface made of polished crystal. The king, queen, and their daughters stood there, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Thousands of Solaran citizens filled the plaza, their clothing just as colorful as the banners above. Rian felt the warmth of the suns on his face as they descended onto the platform. The crowd quieted, and the king stepped forward. His voice carried across the plaza without the need for amplification, deep and steady. He spoke first in the Solaran tongue, then repeated his words in the language of Earth through a translator. He welcomed the envoys, spoke of peace and shared futures, and praised the courage of those who sought to bridge worlds. When he finished, he stepped aside, and Leora moved forward. Her robe of deep blue shimmered under the light, and the crystal necklace at her throat glowed faintly as if it held the light of the stars. She looked out over the crowd, then turned her gaze to Rian. "Rian of Earth," she began, her voice calm but carrying easily. "6 months ago, when the cold darkness of space threatened to claim my vessel, you came. You were not bound by duty or law to aid us, yet you risked yourself to bring my crew home. In our world, such acts are not forgotten. They are honored." The crowd murmured softly, their golden eyes fixed on the humans standing before their princess. Leora continued, "In the traditions of Solara, there is a bond stronger than alliance, stronger than any treaty. It is the bond of life partnership. It unites not only to beings, but their families, their friends, their futures. Today, before my people and my family, I declare my wish to form such a bond with you, Rian of Earth." For a moment, the plaza was silent. Then the sound of voices rose, not in confusion, but in awe. The idea of a human becoming a life partner to a Solaran princess was something no one had ever seen before. Rion's breath caught. He had not expected this. He remembered the talks with Leora the previous evening, the way she had listened to his stories with quiet interest, the way her questions showed she wanted to understand his world. But this was far more than friendship or gratitude. The king stepped forward again, his expression solemn. "Our customs are our strength," he said. "When one of our royal family makes such a declaration, it is a choice of the heart, but also a promise to unite paths. You may answer here, before us all, or you may take time to decide." Rion felt the weight of every gaze in the plaza. He wanted to speak, but before he could form the words, movement caught his eye. Alara stepped forward. Her green robe moved like leaves in a soft wind, and the beads in her braid caught the sunlight. She glanced at her sister, then at the crowd, and finally at Rion. "If my sister has spoken of bonds," Alara said, "then I will speak of balance and our tradition. When two sisters of the royal line choose the same partner, it is not rivalry. That follows, but unity. Such a partner does not belong to one alone, for the strength of the bond comes from holding both paths together. This has happened only a few times in our history, and each time it brought great harmony to our world." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Even the king and queen exchanged a quick glance. Alara's eyes stayed on Rion, her voice steady, but softer now. "I choose you as well, Rion of Earth, not to take from my sister, but to stand beside her with you, so that together we may carry our world forward." The plaza was silent once more, but this time the stillness was charged with energy. Rion's mind raced. He barely understood the depth of Solaran customs, but he could feel the weight of this moment. The princesses had made a public choice, and now all eyes waited for his answer. Leora's gaze was calm, patient, almost serene. Alara's eyes held a spark, a challenge mixed with hope. Rion did not know what to say. Commander Hale stepped forward slightly, speaking low so only Rion could hear. "You do not have to decide now. Take the time they offer. This is more than personal, it's political, cultural, and it will change your life in ways you can't yet see." Rion nodded slowly. He stepped toward the king, bowing his head. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady though his heart was pounding. "I am honored beyond words by the choices Princess Leora and Princess Alara have made. I cannot answer lightly. I ask for the time you offer, so that I may give my decision with the respect it deserves." The king inclined his head. "Then so it shall be. You will have your time. In 3 days' time, you will give your answer before the court." The crowd began to stir, voices rising again, some in excitement, others in curiosity. The ceremony continued with music and dancing, but Rion felt as though the world had shifted under his feet. Every smile, every glance from the people seemed to hold new meaning now. That night, back in the guest's residence, Rion stood by the window looking out at the twin moons over the sky sea. Somewhere in the city, the two princesses were preparing for whatever would come next, and Rion knew that the days ahead would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. The morning after the Festival of Stars, the city still buzzed with talk about the royal sisters' public choice in the markets. Voices rose in debate in the gardens. People whispered while pretending to feed the bright-winged birds. Some thought the idea of a human joining the royal family was inspiring, a sign of progress and unity. Others were unsure, worried about mixing worlds in ways never done before. Rion was not deaf to the voices. Even from the balcony of the guest's residence, he could hear fragments of conversation from the street below. Words like human, alliance, and change floated upward. He did not know if they were spoken with approval or doubt at the same time. He could not stop thinking about the moment on the platform. Leora's calm and steady gaze had made him feel as if the world had a center he could hold onto. Alara's bright spark had made him feel as if the world was alive with possibilities, and yet, the idea of being life partner to two royal sisters was something his own culture had no place for. Late that morning, a royal messenger arrived. his silver robe swaying as he bowed. "The king requests your presence in the Hall of Voices," he said. "There's a matter that must be spoken before the council." Rion followed the messenger through the city, noticing how people stepped aside to let them pass. When they reached the royal hall, the guards opened the great crystal doors, and Rion entered the Hall of Voices for the first time. It was a circular chamber, its high walls carved with scenes from Solara's history. The floor was marked with glowing lines that met at a central circle, where the king stood. Beside the king were Leora and Alara, both in formal robes, their expressions calm but serious. The queen sat on a raised seat behind them, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Around the edges of the hall stood the council members, tall, watchful figures in robes marked with the colors of their provinces. The king spoke first, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "Rion of Earth," he said, "you stand at the center of a choice not only personal, but historical in our long memory. There have been rare moments when two of the royal blood have chosen the same partner. When this occurs, the law of unity is invoked." One of the council members, a tall woman with a crown of crystal leaves, stepped forward. "The law of unity is simple in words, but deep in meaning," she said. "To choose one and not the other is to divide the royal house. To accept both is to unite them in a bond that cannot be broken without harming the realm." Another council member added, "In such a case, the chosen partner must prove they can hold both bonds in balance. This is not a light task. It requires not only affection, but wisdom, patience, and the ability to act as one heart with two voices." The king looked at Rion. "We cannot force such a path upon you, but if you wish to accept either of their choices, you must accept both, and to do so, you must pass the trial of harmony." Rion glanced at Leora, then at Alara. "What is the trial of harmony?" he asked. Alara smiled faintly. "It is a journey," she said. "3 challenges, each in a different place. They will test the mind, the spirit, and the heart." Leora's voice was steady. "The first challenge is the Crystal Caverns, where you must solve the ancient puzzles left by our ancestors. The second is the Sky Sea, where you will guide a vessel through the living storms. The third is the Echo Plains, where illusions will show you what you fear most." The queen spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "Each trial will be faced with both Leora and Alara at your side. It is not you alone who will be tested, but the balance you create among the 3 of you." The weight of it settled on Rion like a stone. This was no simple matter of choice. This was a test that could decide not only his future but the stability of the royal family. The king extended his hand. "Do you accept the trial of harmony?" Rion hesitated. Every instinct told him to be cautious. Yet deep inside, another voice whispered that this was why he had come so far from Earth to sea. To learn, to face what others might fear. "I accept," he said. The king's eyes held a flicker of approval. "Then the first trial will begin. At dawn tomorrow. The journey to the Crystal Caverns is not long, but it is not without danger. Prepare yourself." As the meeting ended, Leora and Alara walked with him through the wide corridors of the royal hall. "You do not have to fear the caverns," Leora said. "They are silent, patient places. If you think clearly, you will find the way." Alara added, "And if thinking clearly fails, we can always try a little boldness. Sometimes the caverns respond to action more than thought." Rion smiled slightly at the difference between them. "I think I will need both approaches," he said. That evening, he stood on the balcony again, watching the city's lights flicker as night fell. In the distance, the Sky Sea shone under the twin moons. Somewhere beyond the horizon lay the Crystal Caverns, waiting. He could almost feel their silent pull dot in the streets below. The talk continued. Some called his name as they passed. Some simply looked up at the balcony before moving on. Rion knew that by this time tomorrow, every person in Solara would be waiting for news of the first trial. He turned from the view and began to prepare, knowing that the path ahead would not be simple. The trial of harmony had begun the moment the sisters had spoken his name, and now it was leading him into the unknown. Dawn broke over the city of Solara, bathing the crystal towers in gold and silver light. Rian was already awake, dressed in a light travel suit given to him by the royal attendants. The fabric was thin but strong, and it shimmered faintly under the rising suns. On the terrace below, the tall gliders waited, their frames shaped from living crystal and powered by silent energy fields. Leora and Alara stood beside the gliders. Leora wore a simple robe the color of deep water, her hair tied back neatly. Alara's robe was green like the leaves of the Sci-Fi Islands, her braid once again decorated with tiny beads that caught the sunlight. The crystal caverns are not far, Leora said as Rian joined them, but they are not like any place you have seen. The air inside changes with your thoughts. The paths shift if you lose focus. Alara smiled, which is why you will need us. The caverns like to test travelers in more ways than one. The three boarded a single glider, with Alara at the controls. The craft lifted smoothly into the air, and the city fell away beneath them. They passed over gardens and rivers, then over the rolling plains outside the city. In the distance, a jagged line of mountains rose against the horizon as they approached. Rian saw the entrance to the crystal caverns, an arch of pure quartz, taller than any building in the city. It glowed faintly, as if lit from within. Beyond the arch was darkness, but it did not feel empty. It felt like something alive was waiting inside. They landed just outside the entrance. The king's guards were there to witness the beginning of the trial. One of them, an older Solaran with silver markings on his armor, stepped forward. "Once you enter, the caverns will close behind you," he said. "You will have until sunset to find the heart chamber. If you do not reach it in time, the paths will seal for a year." Rian nodded. "Understood." Leora placed a hand on the crystal arch. "The caverns are not meant to harm," she said. "They are meant to reveal." They stepped inside. The light of the suns faded quickly, replaced by a soft glow from the walls themselves. Crystals in shades of blue, green, and gold jutted from the rock, their surfaces so smooth they reflected the three travelers like mirrors. Almost at once, Rian noticed the silence. No echo of their footsteps, no sound of dripping water, only the faint hum of the crystals, as if they were breathing. They came to the first chamber, a wide space where the floor was covered in crystal tiles. Each tile glowed when stepped on, but some tiles dimmed and cracked underfoot, forcing them to step carefully. "This is the path of thought," Leora explained. "The safe tiles form a pattern, but the pattern changes each time someone enters." The caverns, Rian crouched down, studying the glowing tiles. The light shifted slightly, almost like a pulse. He noticed that certain tiles seemed to brighten when he looked at them directly. He pointed them out, and soon the three of them were moving across the chamber in a winding path. Halfway through, the pattern changed. Tiles that had been safe began to flicker dangerously. Alara was the first to react, pulling Rian toward a different path. "The caverns are watching us," she said. "They change when they sense we are too comfortable." They reached the far side without falling through. Rian let out a slow breath, realizing only then how tense his muscles had been. The next passage narrowed, the crystals on the walls curving inward until they formed a tunnel of glass-like stone. Inside, the reflections grew strange. Sometimes Rian saw only himself, but other times he saw himself standing between two shadowed figures. When he looked closer, the figures looked like Leora and Alara, but their faces were blurred, and their eyes glowed too brightly. "This is the mirror passage," Leora said. "It shows what we fear losing." Alara touched one of the walls. Her reflection wavered, showing her alone on a dark sea. She turned away quickly. "Let's move on," she said. They pressed forward until the tunnel opened into a large chamber. In the center stood a tall crystal spire, its surface covered in glowing runes. 3 crystal bridges led to it from different points of the room. "The heart chamber lies beyond this spire," Leora explained. "But the spire will only open a path if we answer its question correctly." The runes shifted, forming words. In Solaran, Leora read them aloud. 3 travelers enter, but only one may choose the way. Which one leads, and which to follow? Rian frowned. "Is there a right answer?" "There's always a right answer," Leora said. "But it may not be what it seems." They discussed quietly, Rian thought about the trials so far. In the path of thought, he had led at first, but then Alara had saved him when the tiles shifted. In the mirror passage, it was Leor's calm voice that had kept them moving. Finally, Rian stepped toward the spire. The answer is that we take turns leading. One path cannot be chosen by one alone. We move together. Sharing the role, the runes flared brightly. The bridges merged into a single wide path, leading to a doorway of pure light. They stepped through and found themselves in a small, calm space. A single crystal heart floated in the air, glowing softly. Leora touched it first, then Alara, then Rian. The moment his hand brushed its surface, the air grew warmer, and the sound of the crystal's hum grew louder, almost like a quiet song. The doorway behind them opened, revealing the outside world. The suns were still high. They had completed the trial well before sunset died outside. The guards bowed deeply. The first trial is complete, the older guard said. The path to the sky sea awaits. As they boarded the glider, Rian looked back at the arch of the caverns. He felt as if the crystals had seen something in him he could not yet name, and he knew the next trial would not be easier. The wind over the sky sea carried the scent of salt and something sweet. Like distant flowers drifting on the waves, Rian stood on the deck of the royal skyship, watching the endless stretch of water below. The sea was unlike any ocean on Earth. Its surface shifted between deep blue and silver, and at times it reflected the sky so perfectly that the ship seemed to float through the clouds. Leora stood near the bow, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She wore a light travel cloak that rippled in the breeze. Alara moved about the deck with easy steps, checking the sails and the crystal rods that kept the ship aloft. Though the vessel could travel by its own power, the rods helped it balance. During the storms that roamed the sky sea, the king's voice still echoed in Rian's mind from the morning's departure. The sky sea will test your sense of direction and your trust in one another. The storms are alive, and they will try to turn you away from your goal. Only by working together can you reach the Beacon Isle. Rian had been told the Beacon Isle was small, no more than a single ring of rock around a glowing tower. It marked the halfway point of the sky sea. In ancient times, reaching it was proof of a sailor's skill. In the trial of harmony, it was a measure of teamwork. For the first hour, the journey was calm. The sails caught the steady wind, and the ship glided smoothly above the water. Schools of silverfish leapt from the waves, scattering light in every direction. Strange birds with wings like crystal flew alongside them for a while. Before disappearing into the distance, Leora studied the map spread across the navigation table. The currents in this part of the sea flow in hidden paths. She said, "We must keep to the eastern wind until we see the first cloud wall." Alara grinned, "And when we see it, that's when the real fun begins." Rian had heard of cloud walls before, massive banks of living storm that could change shape and direction without warning. No Earth vessel could have survived sailing through them, but the skyship was built for this world. Still, the idea of entering a storm that had its own will made him uneasy. By midday, the first shadow appeared on the horizon. The sky darkened, and a wall of gray rose from the water to the clouds above. Flashes of white and green light pulsed inside it, and the wind shifted sharply. "Hold the sails steady," Leora called. "Alara, check the stabilizers." Alara moved quickly, tightening the crystal rods and adjusting their glow. "Ready," she said. The ship plunged into the storm. At once, the air was full of sound, wind roaring, water hissing against the hull, the crack of lightning close enough to feel in the bones. The deck tilted sharply, and Rian gripped the railing to keep his balance. "Port side," Alara shouted. "Over the wind. The current is pulling us off course." Rian ran to the winches, helping her tighten the ropes that held the sails. The rain stung his face, and the air was so thick with energy that his skin tingled. Leora's voice cut through the noise. "We must follow the light currents. They will lead us through." Rian squinted into the storm. At first he saw only chaos, flashes of color, shadows of waves. Then, slowly, he noticed faint ribbons of pale light moving through the air like streams in water. They twisted and curved, but always led forward. "There," he pointed. "Do you see it?" Leora nodded. Yes, steered to match their path. Alara shifted the helm, and the ship followed the glowing streams. The storm still raged, but the winds felt less hostile. Almost guiding them, hours passed in a blur of lightning and motion. More than once, the light streams vanished, forcing them to guess the way until they reappeared. Once, a sudden gust pushed the ship so far off course that a wall of water rose ahead of them, ready to swallow the deck. Rian and Alara worked together to shift the stabilizers. While Leora adjusted the sails with precise commands, the wave broke just short of the bow, spraying them with cold mist. When the storm finally thinned, the air grew calmer, and a faint, golden glow appeared ahead. The beacon isle rose from the water, its black rocks crowned by a tower of crystal. The tower's light cut through the fading storm. Steady and unchanging dot as they approached, the sea round the isle was strangely still. The ship touched down gently on the outer ring of stone. Rian stepped off first, feeling the solid ground under his boots. The air was warm here, and the glow from the tower filled the sky with a golden haze. They climbed the short path to the tower's base. An arched doorway opened as they neared, and inside was a chamber with a single crystal pedestal. Resting on it was a sphere of light, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. This is the beacon's heart, Leora said. Touching it marks the completion of the second trial. Alara gestured to Rian. You should do it. You kept us on the light path. Rian placed his hand on the sphere. Warmth spread through him, not just in his skin but deeper, as if the light had reached his thoughts. Images flashed in his mind: himself, Leora, and Alara on the ship, moving as one against the storm. He realized that the trial had not been about who led, but about how they had trusted each other without hesitation. When he stepped back, the sphere dimmed slightly, and a low hum filled the chamber. The doorway opened again, showing the clear sky beyond. Back on the ship, the journey to the mainland was swift and calm. The suns were setting when the city's towers appeared on the horizon. The Sci-Fi trial was over, but Rian knew the hardest challenge still lay ahead: the Echo Plains. That night, as they returned to the royal hall, the king met them in the great chamber. You have passed the second trial, he said. Tomorrow, you will face the last. The Echo Plains will test not your skill, but your heart. What you see there will be yours alone to face. Rian looked at Leora and Alara. They met his gaze. Without fear, he felt a quiet certainty settle in his chest. Whatever the plains showed him, he would not face them alone. Morning light touched the royal city, painting the towers in shades of gold and silver. Rian stood by the balcony of his guest chamber, gazing at the open lands beyond the palace walls. Far in the distance, a flat, shimmering stretch reached the horizon. That was the Echo Plains. The king's words from last night stayed with him. What you see there will be yours alone to face. After a quick meal, Rian met Leora and Alara at the palace gates. Both wore light armor suited for travel. The royal guards waited with 3 swift ground skimmers, flat vehicles that hovered a few feet above the earth. The journey to the plains would take only an hour. The air was fresh as they left the city, the hum of the skimmers blending with the wind. Green hills rolled past, giving way to rocky ground and dry grass. Finally, the land became perfectly flat, and a strange heat haze shimmered in the air ahead. They stopped at a tall stone marker, carved with ancient runes. The guards bowed to Leora and Alara before stepping back. From here, you must go on your own, one guard said. The plains will not let others pass the edge. The 3 of them walked forward. As soon as they crossed the marker's shadow, the ground changed. It looked like glass, yet it felt solid underfoot. The horizon blurred, and the air seemed to hum faintly. At first, nothing happened. Then, without warning, Rian saw movement. At the corner of his vision, he turned and froze. Standing a few steps away was a figure from his past, someone he had not seen in years. It was his old commander from Earth, the man who had trained him for his first missions. The man smiled, but there was something distant in his eyes. You could have stayed. The image said in a calm voice. Why did you leave us? Rian blinked, and the figure was gone. Leora and Alara were still beside him, but each looked distracted, their eyes fixed on something unseen. He realized the echo planes were showing each of them their own visions. They walked on. The ground seemed endless, yet no shadow fell from their bodies. The hum grew stronger. Again, an image formed ahead of Rian. This time it was Earth's sky at night, filled with familiar constellations. A ship was leaving orbit, its lights fading into darkness. A voice, soft and full of regret, whispered, "You chose a world that was not yours." Rian's chest tightened, but he kept walking. He told himself it was only the planes playing tricks. Yet the emotions the vision stirred felt real. Suddenly, a cold wind swept across the flat ground. The shimmer in the air grew brighter, and the landscape ahead shifted. A massive shadow rose in the distance, shaped like a jagged spear. The hum became a low, steady beat, like the pulse of something alive. Leora stopped, her face pale. "This is not part of the usual trial," she said quietly. Alara's hand moved to the hilt of her blade. "Something is here, something that should not be." The shadow grew larger, and Rian saw it clearly, a huge structure, black as midnight, standing on thin spire-like legs. It was not built like the graceful towers of Leora's people. Its angles were harsh, and its surface seemed to swallow light. Moment later, shapes moved around its base, tall figures in segmented armor, their faces hidden behind masks with a single vertical slit of red light. They moved with perfect, mechanical precision. "They are not from our kingdoms," Leora said in a tense voice. "I have never seen their kind." Rian's instincts flared. These were soldiers, and not friendly ones. "We need to leave," he said, "now, before they could retreat." The nearest armored figure turned its head toward them. The red slit flared brighter. A sound like grinding metal filled the air, and in an instant, more of the soldiers began moving toward them. Alara drew her blade, the steel catching the strange light of the plains. Leora raised her staff, a faint glow forming at its tip. Rian's mind raced. His sidearm from the ship was still at his belt. The first soldier leapt forward with inhuman speed, landing several paces away. Rian fired a warning shot at the ground, but the figure barely slowed. Alara met it head-on, her blade clashing against a weapon that looked like a cross between a spear and a claw. Sparks flew as they exchanged blows. More soldiers closed in. Leora unleashed a wave of energy from her staff, forcing two of them back. Rian shot another in the leg joint, making it stagger. Yet each enemy moved without hesitation, as if they felt no pain. Then the planes themselves reacted. The glass-like ground rippled, and the shimmer in the air thickened into vertical walls of light. The enemies slowed, as if pushing through heavy water. "This is the trial protecting us," Leora shouted. "We must reach the heart of the plains before they break through." They ran. The glowing walls shifted around them, opening a path deeper into the shimmering expanse. The hum became louder, almost deafening. At last, they reached a circular platform of white stone. In its center floated a crystal shard, glowing with a pure blue light. The enemies were still forcing their way through the light walls, but their movements were slower now. Rian looked at the shard. "What do we do?" Leora's eyes were steady. "Touch it together. All three of us." They stepped forward, each placing a hand on the crystal. A rush of warmth and light surrounded them. The visions of the plains shifted, no longer doubts or regrets, but clear, steady images of one another, standing side by side. The warmth turned into a shield, expanding outward. The advancing soldiers froze in place, their red slits dimming. Then, like dust in a sudden wind, they dissolved into nothing. The black structure in the distance flickered and faded, as if it had never been there. The hum of the plains softened to silence. The crystal lowered itself gently to the platform, its glow dimming but not going out. When the light around them cleared, they were standing again near the stone marker at the edge of the plains. The guards looked startled to see them. "You returned so soon," one guard said. "The plain should take half a day to cross." Rian glanced at Leora and Alara. He knew they had all felt the same thing. Their trial had been interrupted by something far more dangerous than an illusion. Back at the palace, the king listened carefully as they described the black structure and the soldiers. His expression grew grim. "These are not visions," he said. "What you saw was real." They are invaders from beyond our skies. If they are already reaching into the echo planes, our world may be in greater danger than I feared. That night, Rian could not sleep. The image of the soldiers stayed in his mind, along with the knowledge that the trials were no longer just a tradition, they were a warning. The next morning, the royal city woke to an uneasy silence. Even the wind seemed still, as if waiting for something to happen. Rian stood on the highest terrace of the palace, looking toward the distant horizon. The echo plains shimmered faintly in the sunlight, but now a dark shape hung above them. It was no cloud. It was a massive object, shaped like a crescent, black against the blue sky. Leora joined him, her eyes narrowing. That is a warship. It was not there yesterday. Alara stepped up beside them. They did not come for peace. They came to claim what is ours. The king soon called a council in the great hall. The highest lords and commanders filled the room, their voices low and tense. A scout drone had returned with clearer images. The black crescent was not alone. Smaller ships moved around it, descending toward the plains and vanishing inside the strange shimmer. The invaders were returning, and this time they were not illusions. Rian listened quietly as plans were discussed. Many of the nobles wanted to defend the city walls. Others spoke of striking first before the enemy could gather strength. Leora stood and spoke firmly. We cannot defend only the city. The plains are the center of our land. If they fall, the rest will follow. The king turned to Rian. You have faced these soldiers before. Tell us, can they be defeated? Rian thought. For a moment, they can be slowed, maybe even pushed back, but they move like a single mind. If the ship above is controlling them, then destroying it might stop them entirely. There was silence in the hall. Then Alara stepped forward. Then we must reach that ship. The plan formed quickly. A small strike team would leave the city, travel to the edge of the plains, and launch into the sky aboard a hidden royal craft kept in an ancient hangar. The team would be Rian, Leora, Alara, and two of the most trusted guards. By evening, they were ready. The hangar lay beneath a mountain east of the city, sealed for generations. Inside was a sleek silver vessel, its hull smooth and sharp like the wing of a bird. It was older than the kingdom itself, built in the time when Leora's ancestors had first crossed the stars. They boarded quietly. Rian took the pilot's seat, though the controls were unfamiliar. They responded to his touch as if the ship recognized him, with a low hum. The craft rose from the hangar and shot into the night sky. The black crescent ship grew larger as they approached. Its surface was covered in strange patterns that pulsed with faint red light. Small fighter craft swarmed around it, but the silver vessel was fast and slipped past them. Leora scanned the ship. The power source is deep inside. If we can reach it, we can disable the whole vessel. Alara gripped her blade. Then we fight our way in. They found a docking port and entered a narrow metal corridor. The air inside was cold, and the walls seemed to absorb sound. Soon, the first of the armored soldiers appeared, the red slits glowing in the shadows. The battle was quick and fierce. Rian used his blaster with precision, striking at the weak points in their armor. Alara moved with speed, her blade flashing. In the dim light, Leora's staff sent bursts of energy that forced the soldiers back, step by step. They advanced deeper into the ship. Finally, they reached a vast chamber at the center. In the middle floated a sphere of black crystal, suspended by beams of red light. It pulsed slowly, each beat sending a faint vibration through the floor. That is it, Leora said. The core. As they moved toward it, the air shimmered and a figure appeared. It was taller than the soldiers, its armor darker, its red slit burning brighter. Its voice was like metal scraping stone. You do not belong here. This world will be ours. Rian raised his weapon. Not while we are still standing. The figure attacked, moving faster than any soldier before. Rian barely blocked the first strike, the force pushing him back. Alara joined the fight, her blade clashing against the enemy's weapon. Leora sent wave after wave of energy, but the figure absorbed it and kept coming. Then Rian saw it, the core pulsed brighter each time the enemy struck. The figure was drawing power from it. He shouted to Leora, "Break the beams." cut the power. While Alara kept the enemy busy, Leora focused on the red beams. She sent a concentrated burst of energy at one of them, shattering it. The core's glow dimmed slightly. Rion fired at another, breaking it apart. The figure staggered, its movement slowing. With a final strike, Alara drove her blade into the last beam's anchor. The core's light went out, and the enemy froze. Without the power, it collapsed, its armor breaking apart into fragments. Alarms blared. The wall shook. Leora shouted, "The ship is losing control. We must leave now." They ran back through the corridors, the lights flickering. The silver vessel was waiting at the dock. Rion launched it away from the black crescent just as explosions tore through the enemy ship. Flames and debris filled the sky as the massive vessel broke apart and fell toward the plains. From above, they saw the shimmer in the plains vanish, the strange haze fading into the natural glow of the land. The invading soldiers on the ground collapsed where they stood, their armor empty. They returned to the city as the first light of dawn touched the towers. The people gathered in the streets, cheering as the silver vessel landed in the royal courtyard. The king stepped forward, pride in his eyes. "You have done what many thought impossible. You have saved not just the city, but our world." Rion looked at Leora and Alara. They were tired, but their eyes shone with the same unspoken thought. They had fought together, trusted each other, and faced an enemy that could have destroyed everything. Later, as the city celebrated, the three stood on the highest terrace once more. The sky was clear, the stars bright. Leora turned to Rion. "The trials are over, but our choice remains." Alara smiled faintly. "You have a place here now, whether with one of us or both." Rion looked at them, then at the city beyond. "Whatever comes next, we face it together, far beyond the horizon." The last fragments of the black crescent burned as they fell into the deep forests. The threat was gone for now, but the stars held many secrets, and Rion knew this was only the beginning of his story among them.